Hello, welcome to Indie Tutorials. My name is Guillermo and I would like to thank the Patreon supporting this channel. Alright, so let's start by debugging and try to fix a small bug I saw. Sometimes when we hit the enemy, the animation still has the input running, so lightning keeps running a little bit even though it's supposed to block player control. So to do that, let me stop the play mode. We can see it in the lightning animator, so let me find it. Resources, we have equilibrium, animator. So what is happening is that we have these parameters, and even though we are setting the player control to be blocked for certain events, this input keep getting input or values. Therefore the animation is still playing, and you see that lightning is running even though it should not be running. So what we can do is to add a small fix in the vectors code. So let's do that. Let's find it. Let me actually go to the schemata, it will be faster. Read schemata, and we have the v third person input script. So let's open it in Visual Studio in my case. So what ORK Framework does is when it tries to block the input or the player control, it will disable this script. If you remember that we have it set up in the ORK Framework editor. So we have game controls, and if we scroll down, you'll see that we have the custom controls, and for the player it should search for this mono behavior. So this is the one responsible, and what we can do here is to add right at the bottom. What we can do is add a onDisable call. So whenever this script is disabled, this method will be called, and what we can do here is do a check if we have the character controller. So CC is not null. This CC is a variable created in the vectors script. So if this is not null, then what we can do is check in the animator and set float input horizontal and set it to 0. We can do the same for the vertical, and yeah, the input magnitude, why not? So input vertical, remember the casing should be, or the words should be exactly the same, and this is magnitude. And beforehand, since we also want for the battles, we actually want to block the player control whenever an ability is being performed. So what we can do is also to disable this whether we are not in battle. So ORK battle is battle running. So if we are on running a battle, then we don't want the animator to be stopped. Otherwise we will get some sort of glitches or like a hitbox when we execute an action and we don't want that. So let's save these changes. Let's go back to the Unity editor. Let's wait for it to compile. Finally, so let's give it a try. And we can actually see this in action. So let me try to find red schemata, and then we have inside, we have the guard with the control, sorry, the animator. So there we can see it, the input. Let's run a little bit, so it forgot about us. Let's try it again. There we go. So this is the reason, because we actually have control over the player during the battle, and we don't want to stop the animator in that case. Okay, so let's move on. The next point I want to cover is that we're going to be running the battle scene a lot, debugging and troubleshooting and trial and error testing, all the logic that we want to apply in this scene. So it is the best approach to, not the best approach, but some sort of way to quickly end the battle without having to run through all the battle logic, like attacking the enemy. So what I'm trying to explain is that what we can do is creating a script, so that we can use that script to end the battle whenever we want it, like by hitting a keystroke. So let's do that. So the first thing that we want to do is to create an empty game object. Let's call it Battle Debugger. And let's add this tag to be editor only. That means that when we build the game, this game object will be removed. Okay. So next, let's add a script. So let's go to our folder scripts. Let's create a new folder, and let's call it Battle System. And inside this folder, let's create another script, and let's call it Battle Debugger. Let's wait for Unity to compile, and let's assign this script to our game object and open up the script in Visual Studio. Alright. So what we need here is a couple of using statements. So the first one will be using system collection generic, and the next one will be using ORK Framework. Alright. So what we want to create here is a list of the enemies, so we can cache that information beforehand. So private list of combatant, and let's call it enemies. It's going to be equal to a new list of combatant. Right. Next, under the start, we want the start, and also we want the update monobehaviors methods. we need to check in the start method whether org is initialized already. So if it's not, then we just leave. We can copy this one and put it here in the update method. Afterwards, what we can do is to check if I happen to type so we check every combatant in org game combatants get all. So the get all will get a list of all the available combatants in that scene. After that, we can do to retrieve the enemies, we can do it let's say 2 ways. One of those is checking whether the current combatant we are looping through, their group is enemy of the leader, of the active group leader. So if this combatant is enemy of our leader, which is Lightning in this case, then we can add it to the list. So let's check whether, if we don't have it already in our list, contains. So if the list does not contain already this combatant, this enemy, then we add it. There we go. Later on in the update method, what we want to do is when we press certain key, then we can kill that the enemy that we have in that list. Therefore the battle will end. So let's do a if input get key down, and let's, instead of hard coding a certain key here, let's add it to the inspector. So let's create a private key code kill key, and add the serializable field so we can see it on the inspector, and let's add a default delete, for example, so we can add this to the parameter is expecting here. And then if we get this key, then we do a loop through all the enemies we have in this list. So let's see, combatant in enemies, and afterwards what we can do is call the org battle enemy defeated and pass the combatant that we want to defeat. Right now we have only one enemy, but of course if we have multiple enemies, it will go through this loop, and therefore all the enemies will be defeated. At the end the battle will end, since there is no more alive enemies. Okay, so let's save our changes and go back to Unity editor and let it compile. So we have our script, we have the default key already set up, so let's move up to the scene, staging scene. Let's save the changes, of course, and let's give it